Hi everyone, Natalie here. Oh, I don't know if it's echoing a bit. Only One United. I'm here with Chloe, Atanu, and a special guest, Tom Garry. Thank you everyone for joining. Chloe, I'm going to come to you. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Big win for Man United. It was very good. Back to basics, really. How was that on the weekend for you?
It was great for me. I'm quite vocal about like Leah Galton goals, etc. They're my favourite thing. I enjoyed it. Part of me is trying to remain positive and be like, it was great to come back to that. But a big part of me is also like, what could have been had we have like earlier games. But it is what it is. You can't change it. It was just nice to see them back on a high and see everybody like back with a smile on their faces. I think it's been a bit of a rough ride recently and there's probably been a lot of pressure. So it was nice to see that kind of alleviated.
Yeah, definitely. And Atanu, watching from afar in India, how was it for you? Just, I suppose, watching a win again.
Yeah, after the frustrating draw against Villa, it was a good game. Yeah, we all are thinking why couldn't we play a similar way against Villa? But I think we were under that pressure, and that's why we succumbed to that pressure, and we lost out on the UWCL spot as of now. But yeah, it is what it is. But 3 goals, amazing. Martha Thomas goal and an indirect assist, so I'm very happy.
Yeah, and Tom, obviously you're not United, but you watch a lot of women's football. What was a good game for you? What do you think is a standout point from this weekend before we get onto the main topic?
I won't be very popular on this podcast, but Man City scoring 7 against Brighton was very impressive. That was a game that I was at. And also, I went to Birmingham against Chelsea, and I know they lost, but I thought Birmingham put in an outstanding performance in that game. They really worked hard, and Chelsea were a little bit lucky to get the win. But then at the same time as well, they managed to get the win, and winning titles is all about finding ways to win, even when you're not playing your best. So that stood out for me as well. But no, a good win for Manchester United as well, as you all mentioned there. And I think it's important that we remember that although I don't think it's going to end in the European football that everyone so desperately wants, it's actually still been quite a positive season for Man United when you think where they were last summer with a change of manager, some important players leaving as well, and there was lots of negativity around some of the off-field things that were quite well documented. I think actually when people reflect, they'll look at a very positive campaign actually overall, and yeah, it's been a good season for Manchester United.
Yeah. Just the one last question, Tom. Can you see Birmingham taking anything from Man City? And I suppose I'll put it to everyone.
I'm not sure. Yes, I can see it happening, but I don't think it would be a prediction from me that it will happen. The form guide is all in Man City's favour. They've won 11 games in a row. They've won 19 of the last 21 games in all competitions, and the only ones of those they didn't win were the draw against Arsenal when Tobin Heath scored in the last few seconds and away at Chelsea. They've won every other game in that run. They're just a very, very, very good team. I think Birmingham will give it everything, but there's a chance. If they play like they did against Chelsea, there's a chance, but I don't think I'll be predicting it. No, I think that will be a home win, and sadly that will mean Birmingham relegated.
Chloe, can you see anything, Atanu?
I'd love to be able to say that I did, but I think it's too late, and I think Birmingham, it's resigned now to the fact that they'll be going down. So I think if maybe there was a bit more of a fighting edge from them, they could have, who knows, I wouldn't like to have predicted that or pinned my hopes on it, but they have nicked points from big teams earlier in the season. But yeah, I think it's done. I think it's done.
Yeah. Rambo clean sheet, but we don't see it, do we? Atanu can't see it.
After Man City scored 7 against Leicester City, I have lost all hopes that Birmingham might nick something in and get the safety. But yeah, it is what it is. Maybe there were some points that were dropped earlier in the season. Yeah, I mean it's out of their hands right now. I don't think City will let Birmingham win this one.
Yeah, sorry if I'm a bit lagging behind, guys. Can you hear me?
You've frozen a little bit like the Brighton defence
Okay.
at the Academy Stadium at the weekend. Hopefully, Natalie will be back in a second. I think you're right, though, Atanu. I can't see it really for Birmingham. It's just a big ask against a very, very good team.
Yeah, I think I think maybe Birmingham. There was this game, Birmingham versus Leicester City, in which Emily Ramsey was sent off. That was a bit controversial game in my opinion. So maybe if they had not dropped points in that game, we could have seen something else in the league table. But yeah, it is what it is. So Tom, do you think United do have, like, of course, City winning? Of course, there's no chance that United might get into the top three, but still, we have made huge strides this season. What do you think?
I think so. Yeah, they've actually performed better than I thought. I was wrong. I thought they might find it very difficult this year. But I don't, yeah, big improvement. I think the frustration for Mark Skinner and the team will be the draws against West Ham and Aston Villa that have completely changed the race for third, because that's the difference that Man City, Arsenal, and Chelsea have had, is they've been able to win those kind of games. And unfortunately for Manchester United, those both ended in draws. And if you can turn that into 4 more points, then the third spot would be Manchester United. So that's the challenge for next year, I think. But I think Natalie's back.
Yeah, and we're going to get on to why we're here, guys. Sorry about that. Tom, you did an article recently about growing the women's game. I think it's recently come out that the government are going to do a fan-led review. They've done it of the men's game. They said the women needs their own independent one, and it's come around quite quick. And you had 8 key points that you think, would definitely improve. I'm all right if you were just going to start on the first one. I think we've got down improving the league, growing the league. Tom, if you just want to come in on that, and then I suppose I'll come around and just add to everyone's point. And guys, get in the comments. What do you think? Do you want to see a bigger WSL? I think a lot of us do. I think sort of when we see the way the league goes. If you're knocked out, even in the Championship, you do your Conti Cup, you probably get knocked out in the FA Cup. A lot of the part-time teams, and then sometimes you're waiting 3 weeks for a game, and that's not really the way to grow. So I think definitely we need more teams in both leagues, and a lot of that structure sorted out. But just talk us through that point then, Tom.
Yeah, thank you for reading the article. The Telegraph asked me to have a little think about some suggestions for how we could try and improve women's football, because the government are going to be going through this process in the next few months. So, and the first one, for me, would be to expand the top 2 divisions, particularly because, I think the priority there is actually the Championship, not so much the WSL, but WSL2. But I think in the Championship there are a lot of teams with the resources and with the facilities and with the ambition to get up to the Championship that can't at the moment. I'm sure many of the viewers and listeners are aware of this, but of course, from the third tier at the moment, you not just have to win the league, but you have to then win the playoff between the 2 league winners as well. So only one of Southampton or Wolves can go up this summer. And that, for me, is creating a real bottleneck of talent in the lower leagues, particularly from tier 3 to tier 2. Lots of sides in tier 3 that are ready to make that step, and I think that they should be encouraged to be able to make that step to help grow the game. And not so much that then, but also if there were more teams in the top 2 leagues, then you've got more match days, and therefore you've got more revenues for match day income, which is really vital to the clubs. More exposure on the TV for the WSL, for example, and I think just more games creates a better season, in my opinion. It feels too short at the moment, 22 games. And I think the ideal place to be at in a few years' time would be 16 teams in each division, probably because it gives a nice round number of 30 fixtures, 15 home and 15 away. But I think 16-team leagues with 2 up and 2 down would be a really healthy place to be at, and I think we'd find it to be really competitive as well.
Yeah, I suppose, Chloe, just want to come in on you. Do you think that'll happen? Do you think it will happen sort of fairly quickly, or what? What do you see as the ideal number? I know Tom's just said there, it's mainly the championship because obviously what happens with tier 3 isn't really great. So, for me, both teams need to come up. We saw last year Watford and Sunderland both came up. Yes, Watford's gone down, unfortunately, but Sunderland are thriving. They're smashing it. And for me, I want to see, the South and the North teams both come up. If you win a league, you should be promoted. It shouldn't be win a league and then do a playoff. It doesn't really make sense. Only for maybe youth football, it makes sense. But, for fully professional, you should win a league and be promoted. So just coming to you, Chloe, what do you think on that point?
Yeah, I completely agree. I definitely think that it should be both the winner of the North and the South come up. Like that I definitely agree with. I've kind of spoke before about how I feel about league expansion. So like what Tom said, I think there's obviously a place for the expansion of both leagues, but I can't help but feel like the championship needs to be brought, like the league expansion for the championship needs to be brought sooner than that of the WSL. And my kind of reasoning for that is otherwise you could end up with like this period where you say you're having 2 up, 2 down, you're having 2 teams that are oscillating between the two that can't compete financially, which is a big thing because it feeds into the caliber of player they can afford, get like away games, all sorts of things that oscillate between both of the leagues. And I think that could be more damaging than it is growth of the game. So I would kind of propose that we expand the championship first and go maybe 2 up, 2 down kind of there, and then push more for the WSL once the kind of disparity between, like even now, the disparity between the table and who can afford the best players, like we've all seen it. I think that's kind of the real issue with league expansion at the moment, and it kind of all feeds in, like I've read the article, it kind of feeds into all of the points. But yeah, I just think it comes back to like growing the game, and I think the best way to grow the game would be to focus on like more of a pyramid structure, so build from the ground up, and ultimately the WSL will be the last sort of tile in that.
Yeah, I suppose just Atanu, like obviously you probably don't get to watch a lot of championship games, because it's only one fixture shown. And then obviously when what do you think as an international fan? If would you want to see the WSL sort of instantly expanded? We do want more games, Vicky's saying we lose the momentum between games. LA more entertainment. Well, that definitely will happen. 2 up, 2 down needs to happen. So Atanu, what's your view? Thanks everyone for getting in the comments as well.
Yeah, I do agree with what Chloe just said, that when you if we don't actually do it systematically, we'll see 2 or 3 teams oscillating between the championship and the WSL. So we need to start with the championship first of all. Yes, championship games aren't streamed right now, but I do hope that changes in the near future. But when it comes down to expansion of WSL, just expanding WSL won't solve a thing. We need to focus on both championship and WSL at the same time. If we were to do it systematically, and by we I mean the FA, if FA were to do it systematically, I think it would make sense to first expand championship, because like Tom also mentioned in his article, it isn't fair that only one of Southampton and Wolves will be able to play in the championship. So that isn't fair to them. So one from north, one from south first right now, and slowly, steadily, we'll see the runners up fighting amongst themselves. So maybe three might get promoted, Similarly, I think in the WSL as well, we need to expand, because when you look at it, there are only 22 games per team. That's quite less. Only 12 teams. So we see a lot of gap. That's why the league is ending right now. If there weren't any gaps, the league would have ended in let's say April. So for a fan like me, I need to watch my team more than these 22 games. 22 games. So that's why I think we need to focus on expansion right now. First championship and then WSL.
I was gonna ask Tom this question, but I suppose I'll go to you, Chloe. Hopefully he's having the internet issues that I'm having. Oh, he's back now. But would you like to see that playoff between the championship club at the bottom, maybe, you know, like a Leicester, and then say like a Bristol now, and they fight for the thing? How do you think that would work?
Sorry about that connection there. Ever professional in this household. The Wi-Fi just decided to crash on me. But I actually would the playoff format that I would rather see, rather than that way, would be a playoff akin to the Football League men's playoffs, where you have the next 4 sides downwards playing a semi-final and a final. And if we'd actually had that in the Women's Championship this season, the battle would have been absolutely brilliant, because everybody down to Lewis in 8th would have been involved in fighting for it right up and towards, you know, the end of the season. We'd have teams that have missed out narrowly on it would be Durham on goal difference, Sheffield United only 1 point off what would have been the playoffs. And that would have been so exciting for neutrals all the way through. And then now we would have a London derby semi-final between Charlton and London City, and we'd have Bristol City Palace, another cracking semi-final. I mean, I think it would be really competitive. So that would be something I would really like to see come in the future. Yeah, and just creates more interest. If you're one of those teams in the middle of the table, not going to go down and not going to threaten for the title, it gets more excitement around for the fans in those final 10 games of the season.
I mean, there's this here. I suppose, Chloe, like, what do you think? You're a match-going fan. If what Tom said and we did the playoffs all in one stadium, would that interest you? Do you think more people would come? And then sort of links into the next point that Tom was saying about men's stadium, a game like a playoffs in then a big men's stadium, you know, maybe even Cardiff or something, and you have all the teams on that one day, and it's a super Sunday weekend, and you find out who's going into the WSL. Or would you want it just like, you know, how the men's would do their playoff?
No, I'd like it like that. I'd like either, to be honest. I want more football. So while I kind of talk about the WSL expansion not being the forefront thing and going more down the route of doing the championship first, I want more football. I want to see more football. I want to watch more football. I get really bored when there's no women's football on. I am a men's football fan as well, but not as much as I am women's by any stretch anymore. So I do want to watch more football, but then I think there could be more televised championship games. There's other ways of doing it. And yeah, there just needs to be more exposure, like across the board, whether that's more games, more TV time, whatever it needs to be. There just needs to be more exposure, because people aren't going to like stumble into it if it's not on television at times where there's no other men's football on or whatever. So yeah.
No, definitely. And I suppose I want to then come back to your point, another point that Tom made, just about modern stadiums. You know, I know when Casey came in, she talked about growing LSV, and we saw one of the biggest attendance at LSV on Sunday. And that was just for, you know, it wasn't for City or anything. It was, you know, West Ham, where really, we hadn't, you know, Champions League's out of our hands, but still there was 2,500. I think it was the last home game. So yeah, a lot more came. There's a lot more families. So Aoife Mannion saying about how people went to Old Trafford and now they've come to this game. Bank holiday weekend obviously helps as well. But I was one of these people that think I want to see it at, you know, a smaller stadium. I'd rather see, like, for example, when Arsenal Wolfsburg played, you know, if they said sort of if they would have had a full Kings Meadow, whereas when it was at Emirates, it was sort of a bit not hollow, but empty-ish. Because it's 10,000 people there. I think it was. Tom, what do you? Obviously, you did put increase the people at these big men's stadiums. We had 20,000 at Old Trafford, seen 22,000 at Newcastle, and they're a Tier 4 team. So there is that interest there, but I suppose I do want to see it transfer over to an LSV, transfer over to a Borough, because a full stadium for me is better than, like I said, half empty in a big men's stadium, if you understand what I mean.
Agreed, yeah, and I think that should be the goal. That in the long term, that the smaller grounds like Leigh Sports Village should be staying out. But what the big events do is you broaden your market and to more people to then hopefully bring them back on a more regular basis. And I don't think it's good enough that Chelsea and Man City have not played a single game at Stamford Bridge or the Etihad in the last 2 seasons now. I think that's a really bad decision personally. I understand why they want home advantage. I understand that, and I understand why that's a good atmosphere at Kings Meadow, for example. But I don't think it's ambitious enough, personally. That's just my own opinion. And I think the perfect way to do it at the moment would be to play 3 games a season at the larger ground. So one right at the start to kind of really draw in that interest and excitement when everyone's excited about the new season or off the back of the Euros, bring in more people then. One around the winter, perhaps that perfect Christmas present to get tickets, get some excitement off the back of the winter break for the restart, and then one towards the end of the campaign to kind of celebrate the end of your year and maybe final game of the season. That for me would be the perfect model. And then for the rest of the time, you're hoping to try and get some of those people who've come to the big event to come on a regular basis if they've hopefully enjoyed it. And I think that grows the sport. We've seen with the Wolfsburg crowd, the PSG crowd, the Lyon, in the semi-finals of the Champions League in the women's competition this year, the total attendance across the 4 matches was over 170,000 people. Record crowds for all of the clubs. So the big English clubs for me need to stop trying to make excuses. It's doable. If they can do it in Paris, if they can do it in a very small city like Wolfsburg, we can do it in London, we can do it in Manchester. And actually, sorry, I'm going on a bit of a long answer here, but Leigh Sports Village is a tricky example because Leigh Sports Village is actually a really nice stadium. There's a quality of the ground, and it's got a roof over all of the stands. For example, you've got proper toilets that are actually toilets. My own opinion, I've written about this a few times at the Telegraph, is that the grounds at Kings Meadow and Boreham Wood in particular, as well as Walton Hall Park, those grounds are not good enough for the fan experience relative to the quality of the football on display, which has been outstanding. I don't think those grounds are good enough for the level of the players. And I'm talking that's everything from the changing room facilities for the players. That's the fact that we can't have VAR in those grounds because the grounds are not tall enough. That's the media facilities. It's the toilets and the catering facilities. And actually, one of the reasons Arsenal went to the Emirates for that quarter-final against Wolfsburg was because they had to have VAR. They couldn't have VAR at Boreham Wood. So, yeah, I'll finish my answer now. But, yeah, I really definitely believe we need more matches at the bigger grounds, and the crowds in Europe prove that it's doable.
Yeah, that's exclusive. That's breaking. Well, it's not breaking news. But not a lot of people probably knew that. That's why they moved it, because I think a lot of fans probably would have not preferred it, but like I said, you want it full, you want it atmospheric, and for me, I think
all of the quarterfinals and semi-finals all had those big stadiums in Europe because you need it you need VAR, but also I think they would have done it anyway because I think they want to treat that competition and those big nights with the quality setting that they deserve, and rightly so. Yeah.
I mean, Chloe, you're a match goer, and I will come to Atanu's point. And no disrespect to Atanu, but no, just obviously when we went to Old Trafford, I liked it. It was okay, but I'm not, and I don't mean any. It was Everton. I expected to win. That's a game I expected to win. When we play Chelsea, Arsenal, City, I wouldn't want it to be at Old Trafford just because I think, especially away games, I wouldn't want it if I feel like we have more of an impact at a Kings Meadow, at a Boreham Wood, at definitely Everton, but even LSV, it's our home ground. I think we're closer to the pitch. You know, the fans are shouting down at the ref. The fans are shouting at the players. It has that fortress. That's what Mark actually talked about, LSV fortress. You know, so when it's a you know, a make or break game, I think like maybe Liverpool coming up, that would we definitely see a lot of things. But I'm quite secure in that we would win that game. If it was, like I said, the top three, I wouldn't want it at Old Trafford. I mean, just your point on that, on what Tom says.
I completely agree. I think
Yeah.
I think playing at Old Trafford is great, and like you say, there needs to be more across the board. Everybody needs to be doing it. But I agree for playing like, and I'm not even going to use the phrase the big three because I'll annoy myself. But playing like the bigger teams, I wouldn't want them to be at like the likes of Old Trafford. I think it puts undue pressure on both sides to perform in a way that's more like performing for the fans rather than performing for the points of the league, and it kind of takes away that charm of the football. It puts a lot more onus onto the idea of it being like a day out, and while that's great for like driving revenue and marketing, etc., fundamentally I want to go and watch the football. I don't want to go for like have my face painted and go and kick a ball in the back of a net outside. While all of that is great, it takes away that kind of competitive football edge for me. So definitely against the big games, especially when they're going to be crucial ones as well. You know, I kind of went to Old Trafford and I knew we'd beat Everton. I didn't know, but I kind of knew. So I wouldn't want to see us go to Old Trafford. Plus, it's like, it's not just a football ground for United fans. It's the theatre of dreams. It's got its own character and its own charm to it. And that's such like a sacred thing for United fans. So to then go there and kind of have the almost embarrassment of being beat by like Emma Hayes' Chelsea, which has loads of the best players in the league anyway, like it just, I don't know. Maybe that's just because I'm a United fan, but it kind of, I don't think I'd like that.
No, I know what you mean. Atanu, just, I suppose you seeing the girls at Old Trafford, you've watched the girls since 2019, and obviously this is the first time we've done it. But even me listening over the radio, I could hear when we scored, when Russo scored the first header, I got like a bit of goosebumps because it is the loud, you know, it was proper atmosphere. So what do you think about more games at Old Trafford? Like what I just said about, it'd have to be the right games though for me. I wouldn't want to see it against, you know, the established, like people are saying. I mean, what's your view, just from a international view of the whole Old Trafford?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't read too much into what type of fixture it is. Even if it's a Chelsea versus United game, I'd enjoy it equally as I enjoyed the Everton versus United game. But when it comes down to the Old Trafford, like playing at Old Trafford, I think this time around it was a special moment because fans were involved. Last time they weren't involved, and the best part about this game was that it happened during a men's international break. So the United fans who do not follow the international break avidly, they were excited about this game. They were like, okay, the team is playing at Old Trafford. Let's go and watch them. So that was a surreal moment even for me because I was excited that many of the people that I know through the men's game are going to watch the women's game for the first time. And I think for attracting newcomers, new fans, new women's football fans, it's very important to hold these games at the men's stadium or the what can you say, iconic stadiums of the club. So when it comes down to playing at Old Trafford, it was a brilliant moment, no doubt. The atmosphere was very, very, very good. Even for me, I was watching on the FA player and I was like, yes, if there is a place to be at Manchester, this is we have to be at Old Trafford. So yeah, it was a good game, but it's about, is it only will it only be a one game occasion where United publicize so much, where United put so much work into it, or will it be over a period of the whole season? So that's what my concern is. Let just not focus it on like it's an Old Trafford game. It's an iconic game. Come and watch it. Why can't it be the same for the LSV games as well? So from that point of view, I know I'm diverging from the main topic, but yes,
No.
playing at men's stadium or playing at your iconic club's stadium, it's very important to attract new fans. And we can see right now that many of the fans who attended their first United women's game at Old Trafford, are excited to come to the LSV as well. Earlier, they used to think, oh, it's so far away. Oh, who would make the trip? But now it's about, yes, support. We have to support the team. It's a United team at the end of the day.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen United so excited for the game, and it was, for me, I think it was second to none. The way they pushed that game, it was amazing. But like you say, it's not just the Old Trafford game, and I'm with Chloe. It's just Everton. It's 3 points. It's just another 3 points, and I could tell watching them. I mean, that's why I think they scored so early, Everton, because we were nervous playing the occasion in a way. I think, yeah, the more times we play there, that sort of nerves will go. But I do agree. I don't want to go there and get beat. You'd want to go there and win all the time. And I know you can't determine, but
the other thing I'd say, I understand that argument entirely. But the one thing I'd point out as an example, Arsenal at the Emirates start of the season beat Chelsea. And I really felt that they rose to the occasion. And speaking to a lot of them, even privately, they all felt that atmosphere really helped on that game. So it can go both ways. I know what you mean about that. I understand that you want to prioritise the result, but also it can be a little boost in those close games as well, I think.
I also think it's really important for individual player development to have that opportunity as well. Like, fundamentally, yeah, they're our team, whatever, but they're also individuals, and some of them have been through such trials and tribulations, especially with United and the academy structure and the way it's been. Like, it's such an important moment for them, and I feel like we really saw that. I felt like I loved the day, but I felt such awful feelings because I knew Diane couldn't play, and I still think about it sometimes because I just see the little girl sat on the end of a bed with the walls cladded in United stuff, and it's things like that that make those occasions so important as well. So if it means that everybody gets more of a chance because there's more games to be able to do that, then so be it, because it's just such an important moment for so many players, and that's not just at United either.
Yeah. I mean, Tom, I suppose want to come to you on. I can see a few questions. I'm going to come to it, but there used to be, when we played. It used to be called Women's Football Weekend, but I didn't really. Is that sort of dropped off, that, or is it still a big thing that they're trying to push?
No, it still happened this season, and it was still given a good push, but none of them have been as successful as the one in 2019, which was off the back of the World Cup, and the turnouts were huge. We had the record crowd for the North London derby, and we also had Liverpool at Anfield, and there were other games around that weekend. So that's been the most successful of the Women's Football Weekend. I think more could be done to market Women's Football Weekend better next season. But yeah, in answer to your question, it has still happened. And I'm forgetting which game it was. There was one game that was on the billing for it this year, but sorry, my memory escapes me. But I want to see that made a bigger and better thing next year for certain. It's usually in November when the weather's not very good, but it utilises that men's international break quite well as well. So yeah, pros and cons.
Yeah, I mean, surely every international break should be called Women's Football Weekend. Maybe that's just because it is. Yeah.
Sure, but I'd also like us to get to a stage when we don't have to. It doesn't have to just be on a men's international break that we see big turnouts. I think that's really good to target those weekends at the moment. But wouldn't it be great if in the future that we don't need those to be the absolute focal point? Yeah, we'll see.
There's a question here from Luke. I don't know if it's come up. Yeah, there's been criticism of the pitch at Hive. Emma Hayes complained a number of times. Yeah, I don't know if you know about this. Tottenham moving away. Obviously, they moved their training away a couple of years ago, and they train at the men's training ground. But could you see them moving away, Tottenham?
Perhaps in the future. It's not something that I'm aware of at the moment. It doesn't mean to say it won't definitely happen. But the pitch has been a problem. A lot of people, not just Emma Hayes, but several managers have commented on it. Pundits have commented on it as well. It is poor. It's just used a lot, an awful lot. And actually, the site's very busy. London Bees aren't on the same pitch, but they're just across the car park as well. So it's tricky. I think But what I would say long term, I don't know about stadium, but I know that long term Tottenham's plans are very good. What they've done with the facilities for the women's side, training wise, in the last 18 months has been very, very good. And I know Rhiannon Skinner's worked hard to sort out a lot of things behind the scenes, so I think that will come good. But that's another example. The Hive is another example. That pitch just isn't good enough for the standard of the football that everyone wants to see. And someone else mentioned in the comments about the Portaloos at Bournemouth and Kingsmeadow. That, I mean, it's tricky because they are ground sharing with other football clubs, but we can't get away from the fact that these are football clubs owned by billionaires. And I think that fans in this league put up with a lot of poor facilities, and Portaloos is one of them, in my opinion.
Isn't Kingsmeadow supposed to be fully owned by Chelsea now? Or is that no?
Kingsmeadows is Chelsea. Sorry, I was referring to Arsenal with the ground share with Boreham Wood. Excuse me, but yeah, Kingsmeadows is Chelsea's since AFC Wimbledon moved to Plough Lane. And I think a few people have been. I know quite a lot of away fans who've been to Kingsmeadow have been quite surprised that it's not being, even having that stand on the far side. And also one thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, but if you're commentating for television at Kingsmeadow, you've got some pillars in the stands, and if you're in a certain place, you can't see one of the goals. So I take my hat off to the likes of Robin Cowan and Jackie Oatley and everyone else who's commentated on games at Kingsmeadow this season, because it's not a good view from that TV gantry at all.
No, I totally get it. Going on to TV, another point on your 8-point plan. And by the way, listen, everyone jump in if you think you agree with some points. You've got other points. Listen, we'll go back to them. I've seen other points as well that I definitely want to come to. Stopping the 11:30 kickoff. And for me, as an away fan, I think it's the worst kickoff. I remember we went to Reading at 11:30. I think we bumped into some Liverpool fans. Luckily, they were nice to us. And they said, "Where are you going? Why you got United kit on?" And we said, "We're going to Reading." I think they were going Brighton. But at least they had they were going somewhere down south. And theirs was at 12 or 2, I can't remember. But they were like 11:30. Wow, like, shocked that this is what they'd put you through. But it is TV companies, they will do that. I understood it at the start, trying to get everything on telly. Even for me, the 6:45 is a bit, I'm not keen on that either. I know you sort of, in your article, you said that one was a bit more popular. I do understand it. It's the end of Super Sunday. But if you're scheduling games like Manchester, like, for example, Tottenham, Everton, and you're putting it so late, or Manchester United, Brighton, or Man City, Brighton, you're putting it at 11:30, it defeats the purpose of that slot, because we want to have people in the stadium. We talk about atmosphere, we talked about Old Trafford. It's not going to help getting fans to take it seriously, one, because those men fans didn't take it seriously when we said we're going at 11:30, and then two, it just doesn't help fans getting there at all. I mean, Tom, just talk us through that point.
Yeah, I understand why it was tried, because they felt there was a slot there which was going to not clash with any other live football, and I understand. So I understand why it was experimented, but for me, it needs to be stopped. It's not been a success. It's a nightmare for away fans, and the later kickoffs have all done much better in terms of the broadcast numbers, which is really encouraging. And the other problem with 11:30 is we want the product to look good on television, and so if the games being televised at 11:30 with a poor turnout because they're at 11:30 doesn't help trying to sell the product on television. So it's, for me, got to make things easier for the fans, and later in the day is better. And I know the 6:45 is tricky for away fans too, but that's a much better slot as well in terms of the audience. It's doing really well, the 6:45 slot off the back, as you mentioned, off the back of Super Sunday. I know the Saturday afternoons have done well on the BBC as well, in particular, and any of the Sunday afternoons too. But for me, that 11:30 has just not been a success. So it's only a fairly small point in the grand scheme of things of trying to improve the whole women's game, but I'd like to see that change.
Yeah. I mean, Chloe, as men's fans as well, I think it's an issue that's across the whole of football. I remember going to Norwich at 12:30, Man United, and it just, Vicky's talking there, even 12:30 to get to Kings Meadow. It's just not really, we're not really being thought of, even with now the clash in the City game with the FA Cup. It just, do you think TV will ever think fully of away fans of, we're coming up with all these things and they just seem to be product, which I understand. They want to make money, but,
Yeah, I get it. I
food.
mean, the other issue is that's raised by like 11:30 particular is if we want to talk about growing the game from a perspective of inspiring young ones, that clashes with a lot of grassroots times. That doesn't work for me. I think that's like a massive oversight to that whole fixture anyway. How are you supposed to inspire young like girls to want to play football when they can't see it on the telly anyway? And then when they can, they're out playing football themselves. Like, that doesn't work for me. I also think there's something to be said about the later ones in terms of people who rely on public transport. It's all right for those of us who drive or like can get the coach and stuff, but some people that can't afford to do either of those options and rely solely on public transport. Leigh Sports Village can be a nightmare to get to on public transport anyway. Like, I'm lucky enough to drive, but I wouldn't like to try and maneuver all of that whole journey on public transport. So there's something to be said for the later one as well. But I think that one kind of does work in terms of TV time. But yeah, the 11:31 and like it clashing with grassroots football for me was always kind of a big no-go. I just don't compute how from if you want to grow the game, you're missing out like a whole demographic of young people who can't watch it because they're out playing football, and you can't expect them to choose between the love of football because they either want to play it or they want to watch it. So yeah,
Atanu, what do you think of kickoff times? Because obviously it's different hours to you. What times work well internationally then? What do you like? Because some people say to me, oh, well, at least it's a good kickoff time for me. And I'm thinking, oh, God.
Yeah, like 11:30 a.m. kickoff is quite good for me because for me it will be around 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, depends on the summertime or the winter time. But yeah, when it comes down to the away support, I do think that the whosoever is scheduling these games, they think about the broadcasting deal first of all and not the away fans, which is not right in my opinion. Even though it is very easy for me to watch the game at 5 p.m. in the evening when it's an 11:30 a.m. kickoff. I think it isn't fair to you all because you have to make the trip. Some of you are going from, let's just say, 7 hours, 7 hour journey. So yeah, from that perspective, I do not agree. And even if it's on TV, so for me, example, I'm in India. For me, it's 5 a.m. Maybe there is someone else for whom it will be around the working hours. Maybe someone is working on a Saturday. So I think from that perspective, it still doesn't make sense that there's an early kickoff. They tried this 11:30 a.m. kickoff. It didn't work. And I think the Tom also mentioned in his article that the Manchester derby was, I think, 1:30 p.m. So that is still a good kickoff time. But I would still say that an evening, let's just say 4 p.m. kickoff or a 5 p.m. kickoff would make better sense because people can, they don't have to hurry in the morning. They don't have to, they, there's an ease if you have to travel from long distances even. So I think if we think about it, it didn't work out, and I think from next season we should be looking at a change. But if you ask my perspective, I'm fine with any timing because as long as I get to watch the game, which is easily accessible, I think that's fine with me. Even a 6:45 p.m. kickoff is around 11 p.m. or a 12 a.m. for me, but it's United at the end of the day, so I'm happy.
Yeah, I think well, international audience are gonna, they're used to those times sort of anyway with the men. So I do think, 6, 7, Champions League night 7:30. So you guys are sort of used to it, and that's the audience we want to pull over. I just want to suppose touch on Chloe, Tom, and Atanu. Just one last point on this sort of topic, clashing with men's games. Obviously, they've done this 11:30, so not to clash. But I think there's so much football nowadays, and they're showing more of Panorama, they're showing more of this, they're showing more of that. We don't want clashes because obviously we want to be able to watch both teams, but it's inevitable someone's going to clash somewhere eventually. So, I mean, Tom, what's your view on? Obviously, they shouldn't be clashing the FA Cup final. That just doesn't make sense to me. But what's your view just generally on teams clashing? Because I do think they do try, and I think they'll probably try more than they're putting money into the WSL. But it is something that sometimes you can't avoid. So just your opinion on clashes of teams.
Yeah, I've got two different thoughts on it. The first on the Women's FA Cup final, I don't think that should be that shouldn't be clashing at all. I don't think that's good enough. And actually, to be honest, I'd go further than that. I'd like to see things go back to where they were a long time ago with the Men's Cup final, where it had its own day, and didn't clash with anything at all. And now we've got this situation where the cup finals are taking place while the leagues that haven't finished. I'd like to see the Men's Cup final have its own day and no other football at all, and the Women's Cup final have its own day and no other football at all. That's what I'd like to see. I know that's hard to fit in the schedule, but that would be good for both the Men's and the Women's Cup final. In terms of the clashes on a more regular weekday, I think it is a shame, but personally, I know not everyone wants to hear this, but I don't think it's a priority at the moment. I think we should pick the best times for women's football and when is the best slot for the WSL and put the women's side first. And if it happens to avoid the men's game too, then great. But I think a lot of the time we end up planning the women's football around the men's football like it's some sort of second-class citizen, and it's like it's second fiddle. And the priority should be what is the best slot for the women's game. And yeah, that would be my view on it. That they'd avoid it, not a priority for me.
I agree. I think it sort of goes back to what we were saying about we want people to come within in its own right kind of thing. And I think if you're just trying to fit it around, then you'll never have that standalone fan base, if you get what I mean. You want people to be like what Chloe says, she chooses the women, I choose the women. So I just think, yeah, it'd be unfortunate if people would go to the men, but I feel like there would still be a good enough crowd for the women. Just going on to your other point, it sort of links back. Sorry, I'm looking at it on the screen. That's why. It links back, growing the grassroots. So I'm just putting more money into it. That was that your point, Tom?
Money partly, but also I think more could be done just to help accommodate, women's sides. I'd like to see
schools and grassroots. You said,
yeah. I'd like to see more schools, all schools, giving girls an equal opportunity to play football. I don't know what it was like for the three of you, but when I was at school, it was quite rigidly, that boys would play football, rugby, and then cricket, and girls would play netball, hockey, and rounders. And I know a lot of schools that's changing, but it's still the case at too many schools. And I know the FA are doing quite a lot actually to try and address this. They're working really hard and more schools are coming on board, and they've got a target to get to. I'm going to forget what was in my own article here, but I think 75% by 2024 was the target. Please correct me if that's not right. But I just think that it's such a shame if there are any girls out there at school who want to play football and aren't being given the chance to do so, either in PE or as an after-school club. That's a massive shame. And that's got that we really need that to change, because I'm not saying that everyone should have to play football. It's just a real shame if there are people out there who want to but can't. That's a massive disappointment for the grassroots game, and hopefully that will change.
I'm going to come on to you, Chloe, and just you tell us your experience at school. But in me at school, I think I loved playing football at plague time, lunchtime, dinner time. That's all I did. There was a school, this is in primary, there was a team, but it was just boys. And then high school, there was a girls' team, but I think by then I know I wasn't any good anyway, but I think by then, other things took over. You wanted to go out, you wanted to do this, hair, makeup, go out, wear things. So I just, even though the love for football was still there, I don't think I had the determination to carry on doing it. Maybe if I was doing it from primary school, then it would have carried on, But when they're 12, 13, it just wasn't
the thing for me. But Chloe, growing up, what was it like? Your school, primary and secondary?
I remember like in primary school, we'd sort of try like a whole plethora of different sports. But I remember in PE, if we ever did football in primary school, it'd always be mixed teams. And the argument there was the advantage of you'd feel great if you had like the best boys on your team. It was never you'd feel great if you had the best girls on your team, because there was really no best girls, because the football was for the boys. And then in high school, like I was quite lucky. My high school was very like sports focused anyway. So we kind of tried everything, obviously separate classes with boys and girls anyway. So we'd try everything. And that was kind of like quite a safe and fostering environment to try sports out. Especially with football, when you're so like, you believe when you're quite young that it's such a masculine thing anyway. So it was always quite a safe and like fostering environment for that. But that was where it kind of stopped at the classroom. There was never really like a girls' team. There was never that in the same way as there was a netball team, where there'd be girls who would get pulled out of class early to go to netball matches like in different schools and on coaches. There was never that for football ever. And I like netball does nothing for me. So it was just kind of there. So yeah, it was, yeah, I think there definitely needs to be more. My brother plays football, like club football, and before he was at a club and he was at grassroots level, there was always a young girl that would play on his team, and like they're still really good friends now. And like I think about her all the time, because they'd go and face these teams and they'd be like as young as 6, and the other team would be laughing hysterically at this little girl in this like football kit that was way too big for her, and she was the best player on the pitch. Like, no disrespect to my brother because he's quality, but she was the best player on the pitch every single time. And I just think about like girls like that don't get that chance or are forced into teams with boys. We've all heard like so many interviews with like Mary Earps has come out and said how she really struggled in playing in teams with boys. Katie Zellum says it a lot. And we're now at that point where we're all kind of understanding gender and sex and everything more, that like we need to be replicating that in grassroots levels in schools, where like young girls are getting that opportunity in the same way. It's not all like hockey and girls don't actually like sports, because so many do, and it's such an important and enriching thing for a child to do, whether you're good at it or whether you're not. I 100% agree. There's nothing more that warms my heart than seeing those videos of like Ella Toon and Russo going to like schools and showing kids and stuff. Like, I'd lost my mind. I would have lost my mind at that school. Even if I didn't know who they are, I'd be like, wow, that's like a real life footballer. So it's just important, but there needs to be more done. There needs to be more funding across the board. They could do with being, I don't know, some sort of like coaching course for teachers on how to integrate girls better into like masculine sports. We're at the point now where it's like a pivotal moment between like pushing too hard into it all or just letting it go. I think we just need to encourage as many children as we can across the board, no matter what gender, to do sports, but particularly for young girls. And it feeds back to everything we've been saying about seeing them on TV and seeing them outside grounds and like them being on pictures and posters. People are like, young girls aren't going to want to play football if they don't get to see it. So it feeds into like every single point, goes back to like young people.
No, 100%. And I suppose Atanu, I just want to your views on what Chloe said. Well, we watch a lot of development football. And we talk about the pathways and our RTC, and it's not the same as the boys. That there's more stages at the boys, and does that help them develop more? Because then obviously it goes under 16s, under 21s, first team. So just your views on, I suppose, grassroots and that kind of thing, and then obviously what Chloe said.
Yeah, I think like in my case as well, they were, like Chloe mentioned, with her brother. There were girls who played better, who played really well. The same thing was with me as well, but the thing was, of course, there was no proper women's team, no proper girls team, so they weren't encouraged to play football. So that's something that I did not like. Now I think about it. Earlier I did not used to mention it, but now when I think about it, I feel bad. Maybe what could have been, what if. So yeah, I think with grassroots football, it's about encouraging girls, telling them that yes, there's a future in football as well. Like Chloe mentioned, if if students, for example, are told that yes, there is a future in football, if the games are easily accessible to them, that's when the real change happens. I can go and tell some people, okay, women's football, this, that, but unless and until they watch it with their own eyes, they won't understand it. Unless and until they feel a part of the game, they won't understand it. So I think it all comes down to, before you enroll your child or your daughter or your son in the academy, you have to encourage them. You have to inform them. Yes, there. This is the pathway. One day you might reach here. You have to, and the love of the game should also be there. So it all starts when you're around 6 or 7 years old. In the academy as well, if you don't have a proper coach who's leading you, if you do not have proper facilities, people will be like, okay, we are in the academy, and they'll be like, okay, I'm here just for the sake of it, and they won't be focusing on football. They'll be focusing on making friends or gossiping or dancing and whatever. So I think proper guidance, first of all, proper information, and the love of the game has to be inculcated. Yes, it grows on you initially from time to time, but I think you have to make them understand that yes, you can focus on sports and you can focus on academics. Because in our case in India, there is this taboo that you won't make it into sports. So you do not see many Indian footballers making it out in the European football leagues or whatever. So I think that has to change from an initial stage. And yes, of course, you have to be coached well, you have to have that talent. But if you do not have information, if you do not have that love for the game, nothing can happen. And there were, like, I do not mention it, but there were girls who like, I was a defender, so I wanted to tackle them, but they were so good with the ball that I was dumbstruck. What is happening? So I think, now that I think about it, I think if they were instructed in a better way, if there was a proper girls team, maybe I could have seen them in the academy, in United Academy, for example, or in some other academy. So I think from that point of view, it is very, very bad. I'm not able to put it into words, but yes, I hope you all can understand what I'm trying to say.
No, 100%. And Mark here bringing up a point. If it comes up on the side, a lot of players, they sort of, and I know Mark watches a lot of academy football. They go to America on scholarships, and I would like to see. I mean, I don't know what you think, Tom, just around sort of academy football, because it sort of links in with grassroots, and more girls playing, and there are more opportunities. There are, like, they can make a career, but we don't see that step up enough, in my opinion, in the women's game, like we do in the men's. And then we do see a lot of young English talent having to go abroad and then come back. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I mean, for me, I know it's something that me and Atanu have talked about. I'd like to see more steps in the RTC for younger players. I'd like to see an under 18s. People have talked about maybe a under 23s, under 19s, because I think we see a lot of our men's boys playing, under 18, under 19, under this, under that. And it just sort of goes 14, 16, 20, 23 in the women. And it's not really, I don't know if that then sort of rushes it through. I mean, just I suppose your view, and I'll come to other people and get in the comments, guys.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And I'd also like to see more of the tier 1 categorized RTCs in different parts of the country. I mean, there's too many parts of the country where you're several hours away from your nearest tier 1 RTC. So that needs to change. And even if you look in London, for example, in obviously huge population, North London, there's only one with Arsenal. So it's not easy to get to, and that's a city example. I mean, let's look at like the southwest and up in in East Anglia and all. It's some parts of the country are really far away from their nearest top level academy, and that's something that we want to change to make it easier for the best talent to be brought through the system. 100%.
Yeah, no, definitely. Just going on to another point, and I think this will help it, increasing prize money. And we've seen with the FA Cup, with the Women's Football Fan Collective and part of them, and everyone supports, we saw that increase, equal FA Cup, equal FA Cup, equal FA Cup. And I think, you did an article on it at the time, Tom. It was all over the social media. Everyone was talking about it. And then suddenly there's prize money increased tenfold. I mean, just I suppose your opinion on why you put that one down, Tom, but on generally, like on the money that is in women's game, do you think it can be distributed better in more priority areas?
Absolutely. To me, the priority areas are lower down the pyramid. That's a fairly political view, but that's just my view, that we should bring the bottom upwards and strengthen the grassroots to help everybody. I mean, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City and Man United and some of those other men's Premier League linked sides don't need the money from prize money, but the clubs in the Championship downwards could really use it, particularly the third, fourth, fifth tier, could make a huge difference to their facilities, to everything. We're talking about clubs being run by volunteers, and you could win 4 cup games and still only get maybe a couple of £1,000 if you're lucky. It's not covering the costs, and it's not good enough for me. Whereas we're giving on the men's side millions of pounds for winning. I just want to see it spread out more evenly, and I think that's huge. And prize money goes a lot further in the women's game than in the men's as a percentage of the wider budget. I think it would make a big difference. I think it would make up for years of neglect that we've had, not just the 50-year ban, but also the kind of the 20 years or so after that, until the FA started to actually take women's football on board themselves. And I think a lot of people don't understand the call for equal prize money. A lot of the comments that we get at the Telegraph and also on social media, people sort of saying, "Oh, you want equal pay, equal pay." It's not actually equal pay. I don't know anyone who's really calling for equal salaries. No, Miedemar's contracts up this summer, she's not asking for the same salary as Ronaldo or Messi. Nobody in the women's game is calling for equal pay in that regard. Everyone understands that from a commercial point of view. But equal prize money and governing bodies that are meant to be a not-for-profit organisation like the FA, I believe have a duty to treat men and women equally and fairly, and that's why equal prize money is not the same argument as equal pay, and I think that's really important.
Chloe, I saw you nodding. What did you think when obviously that campaign was started, Equal FA Cup? Like Tom said, there was a lot of pushback on it, but it's still a campaign. We've seen them increase the money, but if they still could go further. So just I suppose your opinion on that.
I completely agree with what Tom's saying. I feel like there's something to be said for not getting carried away and not wanting to run before you can walk with the improvements that women's football needs to go into. We're not asking for equal pay or anything like that, but the prize money and it being upped in the way it was by the amount it was demonstrates that it was always there and available to be there. So it shouldn't have had to take the call out that it did for that to happen. But I think that it can't just be the money needs to be filtered throughout the entire competition of the FA Cup. I can't remember. It was either the Two Girls Talk Ball podcast or the Women's Football podcast. When it first happened, they were talking about how there's still teams that qualify for the FA Cup who end up owing money when they go away because they have to pay for their own coaches and everything like that. That to me is crazy. That's absurd. If the money needs to hit those teams, because what's the point of upping it to that extent if it's going to be your likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, City, even us to some degree that win it? It's not, because let's be real, it's going to be one of those sides that do win it. That's just the way the cookie crumbles at the moment, with the disparity in the players, in the league, etc. It needs to filter through the entire system, where every team that plays is seeing some proportion of that. It's the only way to do it, in my opinion. Otherwise, there's no point. It's just going to make the richest clubs get richer and richer, afford better players. That doesn't only impact the FA Cup, it impacts the league. And then we're back in the same position where the top teams are like getting mad international, like amazing players, but then you've got teams at the bottom who are just scraping to get by. That doesn't work for me.
Definitely. I mean, definitely we'll touch on, I know that links into the final point, but Tanu, just your view on equal FA Cup, more prize money, more, we've seen the TV deal come in, that obviously that needs to filter down, not just sort of WSL, but down Championship. Barclays are getting involved in that. We want to see, we're talking about, people have talked about 2 professional leagues. Well, there has to be something for it, there has to be some kind of reward. You go professional, you win games, you finish high at the table. Where's the reward? So just, I suppose, your view on what Tom's point, better prize money.
Yeah, like Tom also mentioned these figures in his article, that earlier it was around 500k the prize money, and now it's around 3 or 4 million. Yes, there has been an increase, but when we compare it to the men's prize money, men's FA Cup prize money, there's still a huge gap. I think their prize money is around 18 or 19 million pounds. So you can see around 13 or 14 million pounds of worth of difference between the women's FA Cup prize money and the men's FA Cup prize money. So at the end of the day, if you look at it, yes, there has been an increase in the prize money, and a huge amount of appreciation goes to the fans, because they've brought this movement, Equal FA Cup, into effect. But there's still a long way to go. If this is only the FA Cup. If we look at the League Cup, Tom also mentioned in his article that the prize money for the Women's League Cup is quite negligible, and for the Men's League Cup it's around 500k. So like there's a 500k gap. Imagine if those 500k is being given to the Women's League Cup winners. In 500k in women's game, we can see transfers happening, a big transfers happening. So why isn't the investment being made? And then when the investment isn't being made, we won't see the development. We won't see more visibility towards the game, because when we see, like, for the Leicester City men's team, they won the Premier League. For example, similarly, we might see a fairy tale in the Women's League Cup or the Women's FA Cup. They might win it, but what are they getting out of it? 3 million right now. Earlier it used to be 500k. What's 500k in comparison to the men's when they get 16 million or 18 million? So I think there is a huge gap, and I do agree with Tom's point, with Chloe's point, that we aren't asking for equal pay. It's about the difference between the prize money. It's the difference between, there's one winner with the men's, there's one winner with the women's. They both have worked equally hard to reach where they are. So I think they should be awarded relatively well, which we aren't seeing right now.
We're all agreeing. Yeah. Everyone's so nice on this podcast. We just need to come on and say something really like controversial.
No, listen, this is the controversial point for me. This is where I think that the FA have let themselves down on this one, and it's about the referees. And every day I'm disgusted. That's what I'm going to say. Every day, there's always something. There's always something. There's Martha Thomas at Old Trafford scored a goal. There's Honor scored a goal, disallowed. There's, you could say maybe the Chelsea goal, the Chelsea penalty was a bit dodgy. There's always something in women's football. Sorry, I don't know everyone's teams. I just know my own. But I can list about 10 things, that happen. And for me, the Kelly, I don't know what I said, Kelly, the head of FA, oh, we believe in women, we're doing this. This is what we want to do. They sat that woman down, the Euros, and we're all going to do this. And I just think it's all fluff, a lot of that, because then they ask the question, when are they going to be professional? Oh, well, it's in the future. But look at all this, and we should support the refs. And I can't, a lot of people get annoyed with me on social media because I sit there and say these refs aren't good enough, but they are not good enough. And I just think that this FA Cup has shown that money is there. Oh, what you said, Chloe, they just pulled it out. It's gone from 50,000 or something to 3 million. So that money is there. And that's when I meant that to you, Tom, the money is there, the things are happening, but I just feel like they're putting them in places that doesn't really need it as much. I'm not saying, take it from grassroots or this and that, but for me, I think the WSL is a fully professional league, and I just feel like the fact that it's on telly and we're seeing all these mistakes all the time, it's just making it even a bit of a laughing stock for me. And I just think, I love that it's on telly, but sometimes I look back and I think, was telly the best way? Because I feel like I would, for me, the fact that we still have these part-time referees, I agree with Vic. It undermines all the hard work. It's not. That's the one area that always gets on my nerves with the FA, and I don't think I'll ever stop on my mission until we have better referees.
I think the referees. I feel sorry for the referees in the league because I think they all work tremendously hard. I think they do a good job. I think there's a lot of very talented officials there. They just don't have access to the same full-time professional setup. And it's it's very difficult to expect them to perform the same as a men's Premier League ref who is full time. It's a big step. I understand the FA's point that they've got to choose what to put the money into, and other things that their money needs to go to. For me, I would say that actually, because it's often the clubs in the WSL that are moaning about this a lot, I would say to the clubs in the WSL, who, with the exception of Birmingham and Reading, are all in a very wealthy situation relative to the rest of the women's game, I would be giving them a slightly smaller share of the broadcast revenue. They already get quite a small share, but I would give them an even smaller share of the broadcast revenue, and I would put that money straight into having full-time referees. I know the clubs might not like. Excuse me, the clubs might not like me saying that, but that would be a way of essentially indirectly the men's Premier League riches paying for this change, and it would help because it's not going to happen, I don't think, because I think Chelsea will win the league, but if Man United get a result at Kingsmeadow, this could be one of the reasons. But the league could be decided by a mistake because Beth Mead was offside when she scored one of the most important goals of the season when Arsenal beat Chelsea 3-2. Birmingham might go down because of a referee mistake. Birmingham had goalkeeper sent off really early in that vital 6-pointer against Leicester. The red card was later rescinded, but you can't rescind a home defeat against your nearest rivals. And but also that's okay because mistakes are fine. Human beings are going to make mistakes, and even if they're full-time refs, still human beings and they're still going to make mistakes. The vast majority of decisions that are made are correct, but everything that we can do to help the officials and everything that can be done to try and get to a more fair competition where you're getting these big calls right it's got to be a really important priority for the league, for me, for the players more than anything else. They train so hard, and yeah, I think for these big things to have that much of an impact is a real shame. But I don't want to blame the individuals. I think the individuals are doing a really good job, and we mustn't forget that. Really.
For me, it is, Tom. Though it's blatant. It's not. If it was, the naked eye couldn't see it, I could say yeah. But when we're at Reading and we're all celebrating an honour goal because it's halfway across the line, or when we're at Reading a couple of years ago and Katie Zellum heads it over the bar and a penalty is given. I mean, I know that penalty decision didn't ever, but that is still the one that comes back to. That's still the worst, possibly ever, mistake I've ever seen in my life, and I know it's not their fault, but I think it's the FA's fault. I think it's the clubs. Yeah, I think we saw with Premier League what they did when men officials went full time. The clubs pay a bit towards the PGMOL, and I feel like yes, they should be paying more because yes, Emma Hayes is sitting there saying this and that, and this could cost us. But then you're still able to go and spend X amount of million or whatever on harness. So yes, I do agree. It should, you know, more, the clubs should be doing more, but the FA should be mandating it to make it happen. And sometimes I just feel like around this situation, around other situations, they're too not forceful enough to make change happen. They run the league, you know, the Premier League make certain things happen, and whether it'll all change when the FA, you know, eventually give it over to another consortium, I don't know, but you know, I just feel like there should be more leadership maybe from the FA, and I think sometimes it can be lacking, in my opinion. Chloe, what's your opinion on just full-time referees?
I think very much like what Tom said. I would never, like, I hate sometimes on Twitter and stuff, people call out the referee directly and personal attacks, and I hate all of that stuff. Like, it's awful. But when there are decisions that are wrong, despite you being able to rationalize them as like mistakes, when they're so clear and obvious that I'm sat at home and I can see it on a TV, like, that to me is absurd. You know, you've got managers, I think it was Rhiannon Skinner who got booked a few weeks ago for shouting, "It's every week." It is every week. I'd go as far as saying it's more games like than not that we're seeing decisions that are being made that are just crazy. You know, like what Tom touched on with Emily Ramsey being sent off, you can rescind the card, you can't change the result, like, and that was a game-changing result. You know, the Martha Thomas ones, that just, it's absurd to me. But I also kind of empathize with them in the sense that if they're not going to have that full time and that time invested in them, then how can you expect people to be at their A game when they're not getting it, like they're not getting what they're worth back? Like, you wouldn't expect it in any other job, so you kind of can't expect it there either. I never want to attack any of the referees, and I don't like seeing that stuff, but there are decisions that are just being made that are just like plain and simple to me. Like, you can physically see when something is on or offside and they're being disallowed, and then penalties being awarded when they shouldn't. And I don't know, it doesn't sit right with me. And I think they need to be full time, because that's the only way that you're going to get the best out of people, is giving a little back. And also just that extra investment, maybe providing a bit more. I don't know whether it's a training thing or what, but it just needs to be better across the board, because it undermines the quality of the players, it undermines the quality of the game, it undermines all of the work that clubs are trying to do to promote their clubs and to grow the game. You know, if I was watching it for the first time and I saw a decision being given that was blatantly like onside but being given as an offside, I'd turn it off and I wouldn't want to watch it again, because I'd be like, oh, they don't know what they're on about. And that in the women's game, there is no room for that, because that leads so fast to misogyny, and there's no place for that either. So, yeah.
I mean, this comment here from Luke Atanu, I don't know if you've heard about this, and this is where I just think I agree with Luke. It's just ridiculous, the things that they come out with. I'm sorry, I know she's probably a great girl. It's Kelly who runs the FA, but VAR light, so they'd look back on the screen. It wouldn't be real VAR. It'd be, you know, the TV camera could see that Leah Williamson handled the ball because it was blatant, you know. There was also one at West Ham where the girl basically played basketball, you know. And I just think the ref was looking directly at it. Everyone screamed. I know they shouldn't be influenced by screaming, but he's gone. So Tom, what do you think this? Oh, he's back now. But you know, just this VAR light that they're talking about, and then Luke's even said goal line technology, and I just think we should have professional referees before we have any of this technology. I do think goal line is very important, but I just think like that on a goal, if we look back to it, how far across the line, you know, because it's like Frank Lampard's in the World Cup for me, that one.
I think that was one where we shouldn't need technology for that to be given. I mean, I think all of us up in the press box looked at each other and were like, that was in, wasn't it? That was a goal. Like, what, you know, we're looking around, and I think, but that you know, again, mistakes happen. I think technology would be another really welcome step. Yeah, and I don't. When people say to me, "There's there's not the money for all these things," there is the money for these things in the sport of football. Billions and billions of pounds in this sport. It just, a lot of it gets concentrated in the hands of a very small number of individuals and small number of organisations. So the whole sport can look to fix that, not just here in the WSL. So I'm just being distracted. My phone is going mad, and I'm hoping you won't mind me interrupting this to tell you something. Have you all seen the score in the men's Champions League game?
No.
As Manchester United fans, you're going to want to look at the score in the men's.
Liverpool are losing.
They're losing by 2-0. Yeah.
Yes.
According to the flurry of messages on my phone. Anyway, sorry. I would like to see the technology. I actually was really against VAR about 12 months ago because it was being organised and it was being utilised so shambolically in the men's game that I just, quite frankly, didn't really want to see that brought over to the women's game too, because it was just it was a farce about a year or two ago. But actually, I think they've fixed it now. They've got the hang of a much better way of using it. It's they've stopped that nonsense where you were offside by the width of an armpit. And I think now they've kind of got a better grasp of VAR in the men's game. I think I would welcome it very much so in the WSL. Yeah.
Atanu, I just want to come to you, mate. This is a point here, and I do feel it's hard because I do get it. They aren't professional, whereas I don't think men in the League Two, I don't think they're professional either, or maybe they are. But they're stood down, and you do see
football league, I believe, but not in the men's national league. Sorry to interrupt you, Natalie.
Yeah. Oh no, it's fine. I don't know. Do you think like something like this, standing down for a bad decision, would help, or do you think no? I can see Tom saying no. I don't know. I just do feel like sometimes it's just, I don't know. That's my one gripe where I'm very, I just can't stand it at all. I don't like referees. That's it. I think everyone who knows me knows that.
But there's another argument in that at the moment, unless I'm hugely mistaken, in terms of the caliber of the referees that they pick from in the pool, you have to be on the same level as the referees in the men's national league to referee in the women's Super League. And better refs are higher up the men's pyramid than that. And I would argue that the league needs to be put in with a caliber of officials that are of a higher level than that, because this is we're talking about international world-class footballers playing in the WSL, and that's very different to the men's national league. It might get similar or slightly better attendances, but we're talking about elite professionals at the top of their game here. We're not talking about people in the 5th tier. So yeah, that's my own view on that. That we're not selecting from the right pool of officials.
100% agree. I don't understand, because we've seen that Rebecca Welsh go and referee at League Two. So why can't we then get a referee come down and do? Was it League Two she was in?
Well, I think she's outstanding. Welch, to be honest with you, I think she's a very, very good referee, and I'm glad that she's involved in the Euros. I think she's excellent.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember if she's ever. I'm sure there's a decision where I didn't like her. So yeah. This sort of goes on to a point where we did start on, if it comes up, salary caps, and I know this is one had the most pushback. I think, Tom. I think everyone sort of agrees on your 8 points, but the salary cap, I think that's the one where there was the most disagreement. And I'm not against fully a salary cap. I think there needs to be a minimum wage. I know that was something that pushed. I know Rachel Brown-Finnis has talked about. I know they do it in the NWSL, sort of a minimum wage of maybe 30 grand, because I think if we talked about, like, say, a Birmingham, we all sort of know their troubles. We all know they're going to go down. But I feel like, we can write in a lot of rules. Apparently, they circumvented a lot of the rules for your license. But if in the licenses you have to pay everyone 30 grand, that's your minimum wage, I think that would help boost. I do totally understand, though, when I read your point about caps and this kind of thing, because I don't want it to spiral out of control like we have in the Premier League. I feel like financial fair play is a thing for a reason, and I feel like it should be respected, and we should push it a lot more than probably what's being done now. I do know there is a tentative salary cap where it's supposed to be based on how much attendance you get, whether that's still in place. I know that was in place back in the day. Whether they've changed it since COVID, I don't know. But I suppose, Tom, your thoughts on writing that about a salary cap. I'm going to definitely pull up someone who agrees with you, but I do know there's a lot of people who don't disagree with that one.
I understand that, and to be honest, I think this is of the 8 points that we've suggested in the article in the Telegraph. I think this is by far the least likely to be implemented for various reasons, from legal reasons to just the fact that it's the toughest probably to enforce of all the other compared to all the others. It's just a really personal take on it, really, because I'm quite, as a human being, I'm quite sickened by the salaries at the top of the men's game. 500 grand a week, for example, which I don't think as humans we will really understand what that really means, really. But it's a revolting amount of money for anyone to earn. Nobody should be earning that money in any field. I think that's obscene, and particularly in a sport where it's supposed to be a working class sport. I find that frustrating. But that's a really personal take on that, and I guess I don't want to see that similar sort of thing start to happen in the women's game too, where a very, very, very high percentage of the money ends up in the hands of a very, very small number of individual people. That's just my own personal take on it, but I think that's very unlikely to be enforced. And I guess what I want to say, I'm not here to say that WSL players earning, 100, 200,000 pounds a year don't deserve that. It's a short career. They're at the top. They're at the elite of their sport. These are really hard-working professionals. They deserve that, and that's like 50 times less than what you can get in the men's Premier League. So I don't want to come on here and say that the high-paid players in the top of the WSL don't deserve it. That wouldn't be right. But I guess what I don't want to see is it start to spiral out of control. I don't think we're very far away from the likes of myself and other journalists writing a story about a player getting £1 million a year. I don't think it's very far away at all. We've already got a lot of players at the top end in Europe that are close to £500,000 a year, and I think that this summer there'll be a lot of negotiations. There's quite a lot of big players who are out of contract this summer, and I think we'll start to see a lot more people earning that 500 grand a year mark. Which as I said, that they're perfectly entitled to be asking for that. They're brilliant footballers, but it alarms me that £500,000 kind of mark is, the sort of money that you could run a really decent championship club on, the whole club. So it's just a political sort of life view of mine, and I find it a bit alarming. But I don't think that this suggestion will be taken on board. No.
Atanu, obviously, someone who watched the men game, like what Tom's just said about that kind of thing. It sort of really links into, I suppose, another point about like medical facilities, and we're talking about championship, and we're talking about them all having the same sort of like a basic sort of standard. And then you see like you say, we don't begrudge anyone like Caroline Graham-Hansen or Alexia Putellas. They're the best in the world. Of course, they're going to earn more than a championship player or a Birmingham player, but we don't want it to become like the men, like like what Tom says, obscene, and we don't want to see like a Coventry going bust. We don't want to see sort of Birmingham not having proper medical facilities, and then seeing people on £1 million or whatever. So just your opinion on that point, and then before just wrap it up.
Yeah, I think this will create a huge disparity, like you mentioned. There's one club like Coventry who are on the verge of liquidation, and then there is a player who's earning so much that with that amount of money you could probably run the whole Coventry United club. That's just an analogy that I'm pointing out. But yes, I think like Tom mentioned, 500k per year. And we see at the men's game, there were players and there are still players who are earning that in a week. So look at the disparity: 500k per week, 500k in a year. And in the women's game only, 500k per year a salary. You can sign around 5 players with that amount of money, in my opinion. 5 decent players, 5 squad players with that amount of money. So there's a huge disparity. I like the idea of the salary cap, but my only concern is the big clubs. Will they accept the salary cap? Because they would want to sign the best players. They would want to sign players on a longer contract by giving them a huge salary. So I think there will be a huge resistance from the big clubs, from the clubs that have a lot of money to spend on players. And yes, I think the smaller clubs would accept this salary cap. But then again, if there is a huge resistance from the bigger clubs, the league or the FA might say, okay, fine, let's just not put the salary cap. And then the disparity is again occurring in the league. So it's like the rich become richer, the poor become poorer. So it's something like that. So disparity will always be there, no doubt. You, of course, your top players would earn more than your squad players, but there has to be a limit to what a player can earn.
Chloe, I just suppose your point. I mean, we did talk about it before Tom came on, and you know, we definitely agreed that minimum wage. I think that would just push up the standards of everyone. You know, if clubs were forced to sort of pay a minimum wage, then they, you know, forced to sort of have certain standards. You know, they shouldn't have to be. They should want to do it, but I think that would raise the game of a lot of thing, and it would improve English game definitely. But when we talk about salary caps and how much a team can spend, and you know, I think we're starting to see more transfer movements as well. You know, paying transfer fees and all that kind of stuff. What do you think on salary caps or you know, spending caps? You're on mute, I think.
Sorry. I think like the like minimum wage thing definitely needs to happen. That's like the baseline standard of what should be anyway. But I don't know. I mean, I'm interested to think about it and how it would work. But like Atanu said, I don't think the big clubs are going to like that. I don't think Emma Hayes is going to turn around and be like, yeah, I've got, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the best players in the world right now, but we've got to cap theirs. You know, I don't know whether it would work. There definitely needs to be something done to prevent, and I'm not just talking about Chelsea before anybody comes for me, but there needs to be something that stops the likes of your Chelsea, your Arsenal, your City from getting the like cream of the crop players, and then teams lower down the league like struggling. It's absurd to me. Money is one of those things that like is very tied to politics, like what Tom was saying, and I just think it shouldn't be that you're having like Miedemar's wage in a year would fund an entire championship club. Like that blows my mind. I think there needs to be sort of like a redistribution of wealth throughout it all, and it would help some of the issues. But I also kind of don't think players that have not that if you earn more you have worked any harder, because that's not what I'm saying either, but players that are getting you international duty, they're playing for the best teams, they're winning the Champions League, X, Y, and Z, should have like less money than, you know, other players, because they have worked hard for that. So there should be some kind of gap. But I don't know if capping, like, where do you settle on that figure? How do you decide that magic number is more what I interpret that as? Whereas if you think about it from a baseline minimum, we have a minimum wage in society that people get paid. Why should that be any different for professional athletes? And I think a lot of the discourse surrounding the women's game and around payment forgets that they are professional athletes. They're not just girls who play football. You know, and obviously I'm in no way saying that like we should see the wages like what we see in the men's game, because like Tom said, quite frankly, they disgust me. But there's also arguments to support there still being some kind of level of like difference, but there absolutely needs to be a minimum. There needs to be a minimum.
I think as well, not just the minimum wage, but just what Tom, I don't know if this is the avenue you were thinking, but I've seen a few comments saying you don't want teams hoarding players. And I do feel like it can get to a point. I mean, I know Tom's a big transfer guru, but my what I hear is a lot of players that Chelsea signed. This is no slight on Chelsea, but this is just what I hear through the grapevine. Is that they don't want them, they just don't want other people to have them, you know? And I feel like in a way we are sort of going that way. And I do feel like a lot of these young players, they'll go to Chelsea or they'll do this, but I mean, maybe people might think I've got a chip on my shoulder, but I've just heard that through the grapevine, you know, it's so that other players, so they can't have them, you know, when I feel like there should be more emphasis on to, you know, go in and play in football. I'm not saying that the players don't, and I'm not saying they won't eventually at Chelsea, they go out on loan and this and that, but I just feel like if they can go out and spend and buy everyone and pay everyone big wages, then all the players will come there. And then what about, like we're talking about, the rest of the pyramid? I don't know if there's a question there, Tom, that Luke has put about, is it going to be a big transfer window this summer? I know that's going off topic, but can you see that this year?
Really, really busy. Yeah, really busy. There's a lot of dominoes waiting to fall. I think that we're kind of at that point now. I'm waiting for the phone to go a bit mad in kind of mid to late May. I think a lot of people will make their decisions once the season ends. And there are some key things around Europe, particularly that everyone's waiting for a few different things to happen, whether, for example, it's a decision on the future of like Katoto, a PSG, for example. And I think there'll be a lot of like things that will be triggered by other moves that will then see a really kind of, for fans, a really exciting, busy summer of transfer activity. And I think people are going to get their business done quite early because of the Euros. And it's only a really small window for pre-season after the Euros finish before the leagues get going again. So yeah, I think of a busy summer. I think it will be active. I think there are teams that need to spend a lot. Personally, I mean, in contrary to what we've just been talking about, I'd like to see some of the WSL teams really get behind it and go for it and invest. Yeah, I think busy. I think it'll be a busy summer. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. Thanks for obviously Chloe, Atanu, Tom for coming on. Like I said, yeah, I think it's going to be a good summer as well. I've already heard about some potential things, so yeah, it's going to be good. Chloe, thanks for coming on. If anyone wants to chat to you or where they can find you, or just shout out what you need to shout out.
Thanks, Nat. I'm Chloe. You can find me at Chloe Talks Ball on Twitter.
Atanu, yourself, where can people find you? If you're doing any new things that you want them to find out?
Yeah, whatever things I'm doing, you can find it out on my Twitter at @Atanu_74.
And Tom, obviously, Daily Telegraph, but if people want to find you or chat to you.
Thank you to everyone who's read our women's sports coverage on the Daily Telegraph. We really appreciate it. And just thanks for that. It's been nice to speak to you all. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks a lot, guys. Obviously, check out Friday. Andy's on. And yeah, we've got more shows coming up, transfer shows, all that kind of stuff. We're getting into the tasty bits. So yeah, see you soon, guys. Thanks a lot.
Take care. Cheers.